Season 5 of Charmed was a wild ride. We had mermaids, leprechauns, wood nymphs, fairy tales, sirens, Greek gods and titans, etc. So, in the season when any mythological being or entity was fair game, we got an episode centered around the three wise monkeys from Japanese mythology, better known as the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil monkeys, and it was fantastic.
You hear something?
I don't know.
You hear puppets?
This is the final quarter of Season 5, where Piper has given birth to Wyatt, Phoebe has started up a romance with her boss Jason Dean, and Paige's red hair has become even more flattering. All three have some stuff going on. Paige is dating a new guy called Nate. Hey there, Norman Reedus.
Well, since you're already blushing, I have a little bit of a surprise for you.
Phoebe's ever-increasing workload is leaving her with little time for her family.
It's Saturday. I know, but I think I'm gonna be working Saturdays from now on.
And Piper is worrying that she's not automatically good at what Charlotte Pickles describes as
doing the mommy thing.
They're also dealing with Kazi demons, who give one quite the headache, and can respawn after being vanquished until you get the king. But the operative villain of this episode is actually the Crone, played by Grace Zabriskie, who had previously appeared in Baby's First Demon the same season.
Who are you?
I represent those in power.
Although that episode ended with her instating a law against demons going after Wyatt, she's now changed her tune on account of having a vision about the baby that makes her want to see more.
A mere taste of the future, of the child, of power like we've never known.
To get a closer look, she uses some ancient magic to steal Phoebe's hearing, Paige's voice, and Piper's eyesight. Although, judging by this line, I think it's Phoebe who needs her eyes checked.
Nate, much cuter than a Kazi demon.
Yeah, let's run that comparison by the people. Now, it is so hard to talk about comedy because no one wants to be the guy who painfully explains why something is funny, but I'm gonna give it a go.
Oh, that is so romantic! And humiliating, yeah.
Sense and Sensibility is a straight-up comedy episode along the lines of Season 2's Chick Flick, which I also love, in which the Demon of the Week is there to set up shenanigans to make the audience laugh, as opposed to crying or craving for the vanquish.
Hello, privacy. Hello, axe murderer.
The scene that makes the episode is, of course, these 5 minutes of Paige first trying to get Phoebe's attention, then trying to explain what might have happened, and finally catching Piper up on everything.
You are acting like you can't even hear me.
Oh, Piper, it's no use. I can't even hear you.
This type of comedy is called farce, and is all about misunderstandings, contrived coincidences, and ridiculous situations. There are often a lot of double entendres and innuendos in there, and given that Charmed was in one of its 2 raciest seasons, it's surprising that there's none of that.
You're... PMS monkey?
And I'm going to zero in on this scene in particular, because it's not enough to just write funny things for the actors to deliver in a specific way.
Where are you? Ow! Who put that there? Oh my god, Piper, you're blind!
A comedy bit like this is very dependent on timing and cues, and is very hard to get right.
You've gotta find Paige. Why are you clapping? This is not funny.
Comedy is often looked down on because, of course, true art is angsty, and the only entertainment that counts is the kind that destroys your soul and breaks your heart. And you'll always get comedy actors trying out serious dramas in the hopes of getting critical acclaim that they otherwise wouldn't. But comedy is the harder of the two to do, again because it needs to be timed perfectly.
Hallie Parker! Oh, don't do this to me. I'm already seeing double.
Drama that's falling apart can be salvaged. Comedy falling apart? Forget about it. And so here you have a 3-way bit that's perfectly scripted, timed, and delivered without going over the top and taking you out of the show.
What did she say?
What did who say? The monkey? The monkey didn't say anything.
I do actually have another point to make, and that's why I preceded it with this rant, because I'm going to talk about the cast member who gets so little respect from viewers.
You've got something up your sleeve.
Hello, sleeveless.
Alyssa Milano gets written off, as so many beautiful women in entertainment are.
Hello. Confusion.
To some particularly toxic parts of the Charmed fandom, all she is a baby voice and exposed midriff. And yeah, she brought the eye candy to the show in its earliest days, with even Constance M. Burge saying that the sultriness she brought to Phoebe wasn't how the character was first conceived. Piper was the modest sister, and Prue was in between, with her side not really emerging until season 2. And look, I'm not downplaying their talents as actresses, because they are both phenomenal, but Alyssa has always had an uphill struggle. Firstly, because of the racier image she had to adopt to distance herself from her child star days. She herself says,
If I had the option of doing, Poison Ivy 2 and Beetlejuice, obviously I would have chosen Beetlejuice, but those weren't the things that were offered to me.
And secondly, she favours comedy, which, as said before, doesn't get a whole lot of respect.
How do you put it around your neck?
Marilyn Monroe had to deal with plenty of that in her lifetime, and still a bit sometimes after, considering people think that she just played herself whenever she did these dumb blonde roles. Which, no. Just no.
I'm pleased to have met you, Rosalind.
Don't get hurt anymore, will you, Perth?
And proving yourself as a versatile dramatic actress isn't as easy as you'd think, especially if your proportions are bigger than usual. I have a friend who was in the entertainment industry for years, and she was pretty much told that she was, quote-unquote, too big for drama, and basically had to do comedy and nothing else. And maybe another actress might have been able to play Phoebe in a certain way, but not half as well as Alyssa.
Well, I know what women like.
Do you now?
Yes, we like eye contact. Hello.
The main reason the Ensemble of Sisters was so successful from the get-go is because all three actresses complemented each other's strengths. Shannon was proficient at big dramatic scenes, and she played Prue so strong and cold a lot of the time that it really meant something whenever the character had a breakdown. She herself said,
"They loved to write anything super dramatic with me, because they knew I loved to cry on camera."
And Holly then had the gift of mediating between the two extremes, and either matching or contrasting the energy of the others when need be. And she was also great at the dramatic scenes, so that made her all the better to slot into the role of the eldest when Prue was killed off. Rose then also shared the ability to match and contrast where needed, and Alyssa meanwhile drifted naturally towards comedy, which is to be expected with her sitcom background.
Hello.
She had a way of adding a certain inflection to a word, or delivering a line that clearly wasn't written as a comedy one in a way that made it funny. Take this scene in Hell Hath No Fury of Piper discovering the Book of Shadows missing.
Evil got the Book of Shadows. How did Evil get the Book of Shadows?
Oh no.
See how she works with Holly's energy. Holly starts off high, and Alyssa matches when the characters are on the same wavelength. Then when Phoebe realizes that Paige is responsible and tries to break the news, Alyssa's energy goes higher to set the tone for the character's opposition, which enhances the comedy of the scene.
Well, it might be feasible that, Paige borrowed the book.
She would also have reactions or make noises that had the effect of transforming otherwise mundane scenes into underplayed comedy gold.
I didn't mean to. First time.
Take the awakening of her levitation power, or finding the unicorn in the kitchen. So not only am I striking back against the notion that Alyssa didn't put any effort into her scenes, but also the idea that her contributions to the show was something anyone could have done.
It's either someone's sick joke, or someone's working on a massive evil plan!
Going back to the three-way comedy bit, Alyssa has to start the scene at high energy and lead the pace as it goes on, also switching roles once Piper comes in.
Anyone? Hello?
The comedy of the first half is Phoebe not knowing Paige is behind her and then being unable to understand what she means, which forces Paige to resort to even more elaborate charades and gestures before she finally gets it. So Alyssa acts as the setup for the joke, allowing Rose to go even bigger as the disharmony increases.
The demon monkey stole my hearing!
And then when Piper arrives, the joke is that Phoebe is the only one not being able to understand she's lost her sight. So now Alyssa reacts with ham to Holly's deadpan, with Rose filling the straight man role.
He covered my eyes and stole my eyesight.
I think the monkey stole your eyesight when he covered your eyes!
All three play their parts excellently, but it's undoubtedly Alyssa who the scene was depending on. And I feel for the poor guy who was on sound throughout this episode.
Yeah, I didn't hear what you just said, but if you're wondering who's behind this, I was about to look in the book.
Between Phoebe's indoor voice taking a sabbatical and the decibels reached by the Kazi King, this can't have been a pleasant filming experience for him.
What? Where am I?
In terms of characterization, this episode really isn't about that. All three sisters have minor issues that are overcome through the experience so they don't feel static, but the story is more about the comedy of putting them in their usual demon hunting situation and now having to do it without their senses.
What is going on over there?
Gotta go!
Paige having to interrogate the Kazi via notepad, and it turns out he can't read.
I tried to tell her that.
He did? Yeah, but not about literacy.
Piper trying to blow him up without any sight, and in Phoebe's words,
Killed Aunt Pearl's couch!
Actually, the plan is pretty well thought out from an in-universe point of view. Piper relies on her sight to know what she's freezing or blowing up, and not being able to see her sisters or her husband would make her reluctant to use her powers out of fear of hurting them. Paige likewise has to call for objects to orb them, again robbing the charmed ones of another source of firepower. Phoebe doesn't really rely on her hearing for her powers, so obviously she just got the one left over, but still. And the old daredevil deal of losing one sense and the other's strengthening comes into play, to the point where the sisters begin to share a sense between each other, and that builds to Piper and Phoebe being able to help Paige call for Wyatt when she can't alone, allowing him to be saved from the Crone. And speaking of the Crone, she was a villain I always remembered.
You have proven that the costs of a war will far outweigh the benefits.
Only 2 appearances, but she has a great look, and she's definitely refreshing compared to the endless hammy dudes in black leather or sackcloths.
If that mockingbird won't sing.
Grace Zabriskie is very compelling on screen, and I like what she does.
You'll pay for that.
It's too bad she gets vanquished at the end. She could have been a good recurring demon, especially since she set a truce between good and evil in the first place. Despite this being a comedy episode, the bits where she's singing to Wyatt with Paige's voice are pretty effective in creeping me out.
If you let this force feel down, you'll still be the best little baby in town.
And even if this is just a standalone episode, the Crone's vision has some nifty foreshadowing.
I've seen everything. Such power.
One season later, we find out that Wyatt becomes an evil tyrant in the future, and although they were writing by the seat of their pants with Chris's role, I do feel as though this might have been intentional foreshadowing, as the show was messed around a bit by the network after season 4, and as an apology they were given an automatic 2-season renewal, so they knew for sure that they'd be coming back for season 6, and thus were free to set up and build new storylines. And because I'm such a peasant, I only just copped to this foreshadowing in the mime scene.
Everyone hates mimes, you do know that, don't you?
So what else do we have? Continuity.
I hope the creature didn't get you too.
Phoebe is watching Kill It Before It Dies, her favourite movie, first part of the episode chick flick, and later being seen in Bride and Gloom. It's the second time this season that Leo gets imprisoned in water by a supernatural lady of a certain age. I guess Hag and Crone sound more fantasy than Old Biddy.
Hands off, Hag!
Paige's choice of song for the ending is the iconic Fever, first composed by Little Willie John, but more famously covered by Peggy Lee.
When you kiss me, fever when you hold me tight.
Even though released in 1958 at the tail end of Hollywood's golden age, it's often associated with that time, and season 7 will have an episode based around Paige's love for that era, but I shouldn't sidestep, because this episode does indeed end with Paige singing, overcoming the stage fright she told us about earlier.
Oh, what do you like to sing?
Something called 8th grade.
This, I think, was the first time I ever heard Fever performed, and you bet I was very glad of that.
Fever, till you sizzle.
Obviously, we can't share too much of the sound, because, fair use only extends so far, but do check out the full performance if you can.
Fever.
We can hate on Season 5 a lot, and there are plenty of parts of it to despise, most notably the episodes Sam I Am through to Centennial Charmed, but I also have to admit that the season has plenty of appeal to me.
Oh, Paige is proposing violence against the monkey.
This is one of the best episodes of the entire series, and if I ever do an actual top 20, I think it'll actually make it into the single-digit section.
Paige!
To me, this is just as much charmed as All Hell Breaks Loose, Morality Bites, Hell Hath No Fury, and any of the other episodes considered classic approved. And to the friend I mentioned earlier, who was told she could only work in comedy, she took a look at this episode and sighed, "Ah, back when they allowed glamorous women to be funny."
What? I can't hear you!
The 2000s are starting to come back, so hopefully that's one of the things that comes back with it.